Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. You're watching In Deep on the Delta. It is mid-January out here. There's not a lot going out on the river. You guys that have been out there know the fishing is just, it's getting tough, and it's going to be that way for a few more weeks. So I thought today would be a good day to just sit down and kind of recap what went on here on the Delta in 2024, maybe look into the future to 2025, let you guys know what I have planned as far as In Deep on the Delta goes, and just take a few minutes and chat. So with that, let's look at In Deep on the Delta. What am I going to be doing? I'll be here. I'll be doing the weekly fishing reports every Thursday as usual. I will continue to support not only the Delta anglers, but Delta anglers, fishermen, businesses, clubs, any organizations here on the Delta, tournament directors. You know, this is my home water, and that's what that's basically what we do here, especially the youth clubs, the local clubs that are around. If there's anything that I can do, if you guys are involved with an organization, hit me up at on my Gmail, and I'll give you that address in the remarks. I'm going to try to expand on the reports a little bit so that when the Delta gets tough certain times of the year, we can talk a little bit about Clear Lake, New Maloney's. I'm going to be partnering up with Clear Lake Outdoors. I'll have them on so you can get to know them a little bit. And you guys know I talk to all the local guides, the guys that are out here fishing all the time. I'll try to continue to have special guests on to give you their ideas of what's happening and how they're catching fish. So that's going to remain the same. I'll try to keep up my bait reviews and how-to videos. And you know, bait reviews, I didn't do a lot of them last year because, you know, sometimes there's just not a lot of baits to review, and I don't want to be doing these BS reviews and trying to tell you, you know, what a great bait this is when it's just come out and I'm not catching any fish on it. I don't do that. Now, I have had bait reviews that I've done, and I thought the bait was really good and caught some fish on it, and then, you know, it kind of died off for me or didn't pan out. That can happen, but I'm only going to do reviews on things that that I really like, and I think that, you know, I catch fish on and that you might catch fish on. Same with gear reviews and stuff like that. But I'll have a few of those, and hopefully we'll have some action footage next year, just like always. So if I miss a Tuesday video now and then, that's just telling you that I, you know, been busy or haven't been catching any fish, or, you know, it's just taking me a little more time to do the editing. And that's one thing I hope to get better at. I hope to produce better videos, and I hope to get better at editing and maybe upgrade that a little bit. So that's In Deep on the Delta. That's all we need to talk about for that. Let's get into talking about the Delta and the fishing, what happened in 2024 and what I think is going to happen in 2025. And the first thing I'll start off with is, we all know we have a new invasive species, the golden mussel, and I'm not going to really go into that right now. The Delta itself has over 185 invasive species in the river right now. And it has a way of dealing with, you know, the river is a hard river to kill. It's a big river, it's got tides, and it's just a very prolific body of water. It's hard to kill the Delta no matter what you do. When this river dies, it's probably going to be due to a man-made cause more than, you know, some type of invasive species. So we're going to leave it with that, and we will first talk about the health of the river. We'll talk about, you know, some tournaments, tournament weights. We'll talk about the fish, the health of the fish, and we'll kind of go from there. The vegetation, as far as I'm concerned, has been controlled better this year than it's been in the last 10 years. When I mean it's been controlled is there's not as much hyacinth, there's not as much surface vegetation as there has been in the past. The subsurface vegetation is in excellent condition. And how does that affect the fishing? Well, and by the way, that is due to Department of Waterways spraying. And I know that is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but if they're not out here spraying, we probably wouldn't be fishing the Delta, because places like Paradise Point would be full of hyacinth. You wouldn't be able to get your boat in the water. A lot of your favorite spots would be just literally clogged with hyacinth, you'd never get to fish that. So it is a necessary evil, and I think they have it under control. A lot of people complained last year that the surface vegetation wasn't around like it was, you know, in the past 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I could see that. It had an effect on punching and frogging, and the two surface vegetations we're talking about primarily are duckweed and hyacinth. And you had to go a little farther to find some of this prime water to throw frogs in. You had to go a little farther to find good punch mats. Next year we'll see what happens. I don't want the hyacinth and the duckweed to literally go away. I think it's healthy for the fishery, but I understand that, you know, keeping it under control is very important. So we'll see what happens next year. And as far as I'm concerned, especially the subsurface vegetation, you know, we don't have as much snot out here as we used to. We have a lot of Elodea or Agiridentia, which is, some people call it hyacinth, same family of stuff. But that is it's just super healthy this year. I didn't find a lot of snot that I was constantly pulling in and dragging in. When I found heavy vegetation, a lot of it was crisp and clean. It's the kind of vegetation you could take a jerkbait or a chatterbait or a swim bait, chatterbait, and kind of rip it through and not get caught up. It would just bust up the vegetation, and you'd be able to finish out your retrieve. So the vegetation is in good shape. What do the fish look like? The fish are in great shape out here. There's plenty of bait, and all you have to do is come out here and go to a few of the tournaments and look at, you know, several hundred fish in the course of a day. And whether that fish is 12 inches, 14 inches, or, you know, 22 inches, they all have girth. They're not suffering for a lack of food. Now, are we gonna see what we seen back in 2000s? No. And I'll just go on record saying this: after we planted the Floridas in here back in '86, and as they took hold in the late 90s through maybe 2010, and that was the heyday of the bass fishing here on the Delta. If it wasn't the best bass fishery on the planet, it was very close. It was up there with Okeechobee. It was up there with any famous body of water anywhere in the world. And when that happens, I don't care if it's any lake, river, or stream, cannot sustain that type of fishery. It can't be great for 100 years. And you know, they all have peaks and valleys. And what we're seeing, we've been in a kind of a valley here in the last 6 or 8, 10 years, in one of those troughs where the fishing has not been as good as it was back in the early 2000s. It never will be. But the fishing has always remained pretty darn good. What we saw last year is good numbers of fish with not as many big fish. So we're not seeing the double digits that we used to see, you know, 10 years ago, but there's still a lot of healthy fish in the 5 to 6, 7 pound range. Now let's look at tournaments. I was at a lot of tournaments this year, and early season, it took about 16, 17 pounds to win a tournament. That's unheard of here on the Delta. As we got into prime time, you know, as the fish were spawning and, you know, through the summer months, generally it took about 20 pounds. I'll say 19 to 21 pounds won most of the tournaments. There were very few 25-pound bags, a few 25-plus pound bags, but if you remember back in the early 2000s, you could have 20 pounds, you'd bring it into the scale and you're thinking, man, I hope I just cash a check. It would take close to 30 or 35 pounds to win a tournament. Those days are gone, and they're probably never coming back. But with that being said, we still have a very healthy fishery here. I believe there are better numbers of, I'll say, 2.5 to 4 pound fish than I've seen in a while out here. There are solid numbers of 4 to 6 pound fish. After you get that 6 pound plus, when you get in 7, 8s, and 9s, those are slowing down a little bit. But for the average guy that's coming out here and wants to fish, and you're getting those solid 3 to 4 pound fish, it is a blast to fish out here. So with that being said, the good numbers of small fish and the good numbers of quality fish in the 2 to 4 pound class, we're looking good for next year. Now, let's talk about some baits, and some baits that I thought did very well this year, and some baits that were just kind of floundering. Then we'll talk about maybe why that happened. So punching and frogging, although if you wanted to win a tournament, punching and frogging is something you had to do because it still picks up the bigger fish. But for the average guy that's out here just trying to have fun, punching and frogging this year was a little bit down. A lot of the duckweed that we like to frog in wasn't here, wasn't around. It was harder to find, and a lot of the hyacinth that you know we can vegetation, the surface vegetation, just wasn't there to punch. So as far as frogging and punching, you want to catch a big fish, keep doing it. But this year it was, you know, a little bit on a downward spiral. Cincos, always good. Cincos were good this year, and they're probably going to be good next year. Last year was a very good open water top water bite, and especially with the smaller poppers and things, I think it was good for everyone. A lot of guys kind of weaned away from the bigger topwaters and started throwing smaller topwaters because they were catching a lot of fish, and they were catching big fish on topwaters, poppers, bubble walkers, spooks, things like that. Chatterbaits, they had kind of a comeback last year. You know, people got away from them for a little bit, but last year they did very well, especially here on the Delta, and I expect the chatterbaits to be really good next year. Early season spinnerbaits came back. Everybody kind of forgot about spinnerbaits because of the chatterbait and because of, you know, innovations on some of the newer baits. But spinnerbaits, I think, are going to go well. You know, starting right now, winter through early spring, you should be able to do good with spinnerbaits. Underspins and overspins with a little Kitech or a paddle tail, those have been working out real well. And then last but not least, drop shot. You can't beat drop shot. Always catches fish, and a lot of tournaments were won with drop shot. So with that, think about next year. Think about not having quite as much vegetation out here. I think we're going to probably see the same situation with frogging and punching. You're going to have to look around a little bit more, and if you are tournament fishing, you definitely want to keep those tricks in your bag. But more than likely, the average guys that are out here on the weekend, I think if you're throwing jerkbait, oh, the other thing that I forgot to mention was a jerkbait. The jerkbait really came on not only through the fall, but it started early winter through the fall, and it's still going here in you know, midwinter. So I think what you're going to have to look for next year is really weather. The weather pattern, and everything's going to revolve around the spawn, and I will do a video on pre-spawn and what we should be doing to get ready for the spawn. But it's going to depend on what kind of winter we have, if it's going to be a warm winter, if we don't have any of these torrential rains that blow stuff out, that blow the river out. And usually, if right now we're looking at 52-degree water temps, as soon as that water starts approaching 60 degrees, these fish will start staging up and starting to spawn. But remember, it's just not the temperature. It's days, the longer days, it's sunlight penetration. In order, you know, these fish, when they're spawning, the eggs need sunlight penetration to hatch. And, you know, so it doesn't happen at one time, and that's a thing that I'll be talking about as we get into spawning. It used to be, you know, we had seasons, and the seasons changed, and as soon as that season changed, the bulk of the fish would start spawning. That doesn't happen here on the Delta anymore. They spawn little by little by little. We'll start seeing some fish spawn at the end of February. They'll spawn through March, April, May, into June and July. And they're spawning deeper. It used to be the fish would spawn in 1 to 3 feet of water. Now I think most of the fish that are successfully spawning are spawning in 5 to probably 10 feet of water. And that's one of the reasons why you know, it's been a couple of tough years when it comes to sight fishing for bed fish, which in my opinion, you know, tough break. I don't think we should be bed fishing a lot of the times that we do. Not saying I never do it, but you know, unfortunately, I don't think that's very good for the fishery. Fish are spawning deeper now. They're hard to spot, so it hasn't been a great fishery when it comes to sight fishing for bed fish. But take all that into consideration, and think about the weather, and don't get discouraged when a couple of guys go out and say, man, we laid into them today, we had 24 pounds, they're on the spawn. Yeah, maybe they found a few fish on the spawn in a localized area, but more than likely, especially at the end of February, that's going to be very localized. It's going to be only a few fish, maybe 5% of the fish. Then 10% of the fish will be spawning in March, and then April, you're going to start getting 30, 40, 50%. April, May, June, I think that's when most of the fish will be spawning out here. So with that, that's 2024, 2025. We're going to catch fish. We're going to have fun out here. Remember, there may be a few less boats out here. There may be a few more boats. Nobody knows what's going on with this golden mussel thing. So, we're all fishermen out here. Try to get along with everybody. Be careful out here, and just come out and have a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a good 2025. There's a lot of fish out here, and I think we're going to have a great time. So we'll see you guys in 25. Keep watching In Deep on the Delta. Until then, have good luck, and see you guys on the river.